Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. Hope everybody had a great lunch and was able to sit and see some of the live build challenge, which was pretty incredible. I was pretty awestruck by all the developers. Now, everybody just had lunch, so I need to get everybody focused on this. So I need everybody to stand up. Everybody stand up. Even you in the back. Okay, I want everybody to close their eyes. Keep your eyes closed. You too, Rich, close. Everybody. Now I want you to point north. All right, now open your eyes. Okay, good. Everybody sit down. So why did I do that? In the US military, you need a North Star. You need North Stars to tell you where you are and where you're going. And the whole purpose of certain organizations, their whole mantra is to make sure, hey, this is our focus, this is how we're going to move forward, but you need to know where you are. Now, the two organizations that I'm so excited to be on this panel, US Cyber Command and Naval Information Warfare Center, they make sure, think about that, cyber and information. You don't have cyber, you don't have cybersecurity, you don't have your information, you're nowhere. So they're the direction, they're the North Star for many organizations. Please, big round of applause for good friends of mine, Aaron Windle and Corey Rogers. Come on up, come on. Thank you, thank you. I'm really excited about this. It is, I'm so excited. Some of the sessions we've seen are just fascinating, what some of our customers and partners have been doing, and what I want to do is just start off with just a brief introduction of the two organizations. Some of you may not know some of their core missions, and I figured it would be important to part of this introduction, so I'm going to turn it over to Aaron real quick and just give a brief introduction of a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Cyber Command.
So yeah, I was active duty Navy for a long time, cryptologist, signals intelligence, moved on to the government civilian sector at IC agencies, and now I'm kind of seconded over to Cybercom on a joint duty program, which is where I was introduced to contract lifecycle management system, whereby we leverage requirements management as well as award management from Appian and our, your partner, Human IC. And basically, at this point, we are in the throes of customizing the sort of basic load, moving to the cloud, and then pushing our software writing, contract writing system over to the cloud as well. So it'll all be managed on the cloud, which is going to, I believe, allow us to leverage our human capital much more efficiently. And now Cybercom, going through a lot of growing pains, as you may have read, seen in the news. Just AC authority was recently lifted from 75 million. The cap was removed in a recent National Defense Authorization Act. We just basically granted combatant command status, which is a big deal. Comes with a lot of responsibility and different scope of span of work. Yeah, there's just tons of growing pains, and combine that with general DoD people turnover, military coming and going, government civilians transferring in and out, contractors going in and out, a system whereby you can automate a lot of the low value work is extremely, the value proposition is sort of a must-have for us.
Right, well, that's a great description. And what about yourself with NIWC Corey?
So yeah, Corey Rogers, NIWC Atlantic. So I am the IPT lead for basically all of our business systems. So started out, kind of cut my teeth out in industry as a developer. So doing C, C++ and that sort of thing, and kind of eventually migrated over into the government world probably about 10 to 12 years ago, and promptly got in charge of a lot of legacy business applications. So things ranging from Java development to old school PHP to even some C code and that sort of thing. So over the past 5 or 6 years, I've been really putting a lot of effort at NIWC Atlantic to modernize those systems and lean into more low-code solutions, COTS products where they make sense, and that sort of thing. So, at NIWC Atlantic, we are basically supporting all of the folks that support the warfighter. So we're somewhat indirectly removed from the warfighter, but still very important to the mission and that sort of thing. but yeah.
No, it's a great description. Thank you. In looking at, I'm just going to go back to this section. From the standpoint, I'm going to start with Aaron. Now, Cyber Command is a relatively new organization. I mean, it's bringing in people from all over the place, and you have some of the turnover is, some of it's not forced. And what I mean by that is you're saying, okay, this is my new assignment. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to be assigned or a new station. And then in other cases, you have the challenge of there are individuals. I mean, if you have cybersecurity capability, I mean, you're very, very valuable to the private sector. So what are some of the internal challenges that you've seen, and from your perspective on a day-to-day operations standpoint, going, you know, what are the things that we're trying to tackle?
So I'd kind of summarize that as continuity.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about knowledge management, knowledge transfer, if people are rotating in and out on a frequent basis, they take a lot of their institutional knowledge, relationships, formal and informal networks with them. Spinning a newcomer up into that role mm-hmm. requires the routing, alerting, and approvals chain to be assigned to that new person. And all documents are records managed, knowledge managed out of the box. That person knows exactly all the historic artifacts that have been related to that effort. Much faster spin up, mm-hmm. and it's not looking in shared drives, file naming conventions not being standardized, a lot of email-based processes that person wouldn't have access to, the new person.
Got it. So, I mean, also, there's so many things that if a cyber incident occurs or a operative occurs or things like that, the general public may or may not know about it, but that doesn't change the fact that the action within Cyber Command, I mean, the request that you may have or making that process flow work as effectively as it could. Now, pivoting, I mean, now Atlantic has been in Charleston for a long time. It has it seems more defined more than anything, but from a legacy system, it sounds like you have a lot more challenges in that regard, and just saying, okay, which legacy ones do we have control over? Which ones are you inherited from the Don CIO or other groups that you're saying, man, I wish I could change that. I can't change that. I just have to integrate it with. What's your perspective on some of those challenges?
So yeah, so some of our major challenges involve, like kind of what Aaron was getting to, requirements. So we try to break our requirements down into value streams. So we have 9 value streams at NIWC Atlantic, and all of those value streams have very complex processes within those streams. And so from that, you know, you get a lot of forms, you get a lot of disparate systems, you get a lot of enterprise systems. So like Navy ERP, you get Navy-wide systems that aren't necessarily talking to each other, right? So so you're not really able to get data, and we're kind of pushed into kind of what I would call somewhat archaic ways of getting data, right? I mean, we still technically have folks that work a night shift to pull data from Navy ERP so that we could do like business analytics, and we can do like, just our standard day-to-day operations, right? Because, you know, ERP is a closed system. So, so those are some of the really, I mean, that's the biggest challenge, is those requirements, finding the right tool for the right job, right? Is this something that lends itself more towards an enterprise tool? Should we be more pushing up to, Big Navy to provide us a tool that does, ERP obviously they already do, but, should we be, instead of implementing it ourselves, should we be pushing Big Navy to make a broader change, which, in the DoD space is very challenging, given all of the policy and stuff you have to jump through to get to those certain levels. So, yes, most of our biggest challenges are around those requirements, finding the right solution and making sure it is the right solution, and not going off and creating something else stovepipe where someone else can't use it.
Now, I want to pull that thread a little bit, because with Navy ERP, I equate it to almost like an aircraft carrier. It's not going to turn very quick.
Sure.
And it's going in one direction. And for your organization, trying to say, okay, what are things that I can integrate with, like Navy ERP, or what are the items the processes that I can implement and improve locally while still taking advantage of all the other things that are going on? I mean, it sounds like that's almost a constant battle of just saying, okay, what do we have control over and what we don't? What do we don't?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's definitely hard to figure out what that fine line is, right? And it's definitely hard to keep paying these people to do like data pools and that sort of thing when there are solutions out there that can solve this problem for us. It's just whether or not we can make that connection and that connectivity. So it's definitely a balancing act of of still continuing to do these data pools while we're automating things over here that maybe will eventually kind of eliminate some of those data pools and those manual processes that are still very prevalent within our industry, or well within.
So then, again, what is a vision that you would have for under your responsibilities? What is a vision that you would have and say, okay, what is the vision to say, I can do this or I can do that? What, from a low-code perspective, are you saying, oh, I think I can do that, but oh, I don't want to do that? What's going on in your head with that?
So I don't necessarily, from a requirements perspective, try to prescribe like low-code COTS or anything, that sort of thing. We recently put in an IWMS, so an intelligent work management system, right?
Thank you.
Right.
I didn't know what that
Sorry.
was. Okay.
So facilities focused, right? So something that does, facilities type things, right? It CAD drawings and everything like that. So we recently, stood up a system like that because there was nothing else within the DoD space that was meeting that need. We have, I'm gonna get the locations wrong. We have at least 5 or 6 different locations, from Charleston to Tampa to New Orleans to San Diego. Well, not really San Diego, but to a couple places up in the DC area, a couple different areas. So hundreds of buildings, hundreds of floor plans that were all being done fairly manually. So. So in that scenario, it made sense to look more towards a COTS product because they needed robust capabilities that were already there to do like CAD drawings, right? So, on the flip side of that, from a low-code perspective, we also had challenges with check-in. So I think the Navy is trying to get, so check-ins take weeks, right? So they're trying to get those check-ins down to days and hours and that sort of thing.
Can you define a check-in for the audience?
Sorry, I apologize. So hypothetically, Corey gets hired as a government employee. He has to go through all of these wickets to get Navy ERP access. He has to go get a CAC card or a CAC to get access to all of these government systems and that sort of thing. And that stuff just takes time, right? Your first week is typically spent doing orientation, all of your SAFR training, all of your any type of training for that year is your first week because that check-in process takes so long. Mm-hmm. So in that scenario, with that, there's nothing out there that really does employee onboarding from a NIWC Atlantic perspective out of the box. So that's where we started to leverage low-code solutions to help alleviate, well, first of all, to get it from manual to more automated and to increase or decrease that time to employees getting everything they need to do their job. And that's NIWC employees that are DoD employees and also industry supporting contractors.
Okay, and same question to you, Aaron. I mean, from a vision standpoint, what is something that you're saying, how are we going to get from A to Z from like you said, a continuity standpoint? What are some of the things going on in your head saying, okay, this is what I'd really like to get to. This would be an end state.
Sure, so similar to what Corey's mentioned, I imagine DoD-wide this is problematic, but onboarding people, the codification and recodification of baselines for work, right? Workflow processes, taking a look at 1 to N, what are we doing, why are we doing it, which policies mandate that we do it, and are some of these legacy policies now outdated or outmoded to necessitate a review. Once it's in software, you don't have to tell a team of people that are already on board, stop what you're doing, you're on a Tiger team to review policy, to codify workflow. A lot of it is, let's look at radio buttons, drop-down menus, automation of lower level work so that the people that are on board can, really have much more meaningful, higher value work, data entry versus planning and decision making. To me, it saves time, it increases retention of people, and their work is more meaningful on a day-to-day basis, and they see that their leadership cares enough to automate away some of the lower level work that frankly, it's a hindrance to quick turn stuff like Cybercom really needs.
Okay, so similar problems in just saying, okay, how can we accelerate not only onboarding but also those processes? So as you've gone through this, the Cyber Command's relatively new to this whole journey, and from one question I've had is, what are some of the best practices, or what are some of the things that you learned along the journey that I wish I knew this at the very beginning?
Sure.
Or what are the things that, because I'm sure members of the audience would like to hear, hey, what are some of the things that either they could learn from your experience, but also say, this is something you could take a look at as you're going down this route, or thinking of a new journey for a new program?
Sure. I would say much like any other project, plan from the get-go. Know what you need, be able to articulate that to management, because without leadership's initial approval and ongoing support throughout the project, you hit unnecessary barriers. Making sure your CIO is on board at the outset, understanding their role, what your role will be, so that we're all not getting surprised along the way. Just lots of communication effectively up and down the chain to really get it going and then keep it going over maybe the FIDIP, for instance, or 5-year planning cycles for budget.
So have you had any leadership changes that all of a sudden you said, uh-oh, our champions moved on, we've got to re-educate what we're doing and what we're trying to do? Have you had to go through that as of yet, or is
Sure.
that okay?
Yeah, our command acquisition executive, who was a great champion of this effort, has moved on over to the JAIC now.
Joint Artificial Intelligence Center.
Yeah, to be their command ac lead, amongst other hats I'm sure she'll be given. So once a new champion is in place, you kind of have to resell that new leader on the functionality, what you've accomplished to date, demonstrating the value proposition for them over time, and timelines and milestones about how do we get where we're going and what's going to happen during your tenure here in the next year and a half to then get their blessing and convince them that this is an investment they want to stay invested in. So again, more communication, consensus, and planning.
It's interesting that that leader went from Cyber Command, who just received their authority to essentially purchase things, and now the JAIC received the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center had the exact same thing come up. So they're doing something right, or they're doing something right to moving the ball forward. So lessons learned, or what are some of the things that you'd say, I wish I knew this then, or anything that you can impart and say, start at this stage?
Sure. So I guess if I get a little more specific, I guess from our perspective on the low-code journey, we really tried to take it on ourselves. So we really tried to train folks up, get those folks ready to do this work, and then kind of move out, right? So and that's not always the best path forward, right? So sometimes it's better to partner with folks or with leading industry experts, or go to industry for someone that has that experience already, versus trying to build your staff and kind of drive the car while you're trying to build it, so to speak. So that was definitely a big thing. The other thing is we are, like I mentioned earlier, we have value streams that go down to business champions, that go down to business analysts, that go down to developers, right? So I'm always constantly trying to pull the development team and those folks, implementing our solutions closer to the customer, because as you can see with the game of telephone, once it goes down the line there, it inevitably changes somewhat, even if it's minor, and then it causes rework. So we're really trying to lean into getting our guys pulled up and more, a lot tighter with the customer and the end user, and end user specifically, because a lot of our folks that are providing requirements are those folks managing those processes and managing those like day-to-day activities, but they're not actually the hands on the keyboard. So
it's a very common theme where we see the closer the subject matter expert or the functional individual who will be using the application or knows the process is with the person who's hands on the keyboard, using the designer, developing the user interface. The closer that those two individuals are or teams are, the better the outcome is. And it's unbelievable when there's a divide on that, when it's an over the hedged mentality, saying, okay, here's the requirements, come back to me in 6 months. That's where you see the sorry, I'm getting a little bit of feedback. That's where you get the this isn't going to go well, versus the okay, we've had someone involved and at Appian government when we had the Navy JAG on stage and Captain Barron, and it's just like we make sure our attorneys are working with side by side with a lot of the configuration team to say, okay, is this right? Is this not right? Because if you don't know the process, they know the process. They're the subject matter expert. That's very interesting. Now, in some of your team, I mean, the concept of developing an application like this was very foreign. I remember going down to Charleston, and there were some, real Java developers, and going, okay, this is completely different. How did you? I don't want to say convince them, but how did you move them from a a skeptic, this is how you do development, to, okay, we're going to develop an application this way and it's going to be faster. How did that discussion go? Or what advice would you give to someone saying, hey, we're in the same situation?
So still working on that, to be quite honest with you.
Okay.
I don't, for those folks that know Java developers like to do Java development. .NET developers like to do .NET, right? So we have had success in that area. Specifically, one individual, I kind of I kind of talked him and coaxed him into it. I'm like, hey, you're still doing IT, you're still delivering. I mean, he really liked working with the customer and seeing his end product, right? So he really got a lot of joy out of seeing the customer use his product, right? And I'm like, you still get that with low-code solutions. You don't have to do Java development to still have that kind of joy of building things. And so it was a slower process, but over the past year or so, he's actually turned into the most talented low-code developer that I actually have. Very into it now, takes a lot of ownership over all of the things that he develops. So I don't really have a good way, but just getting them to try it and getting them to see that the end result is still there was the easiest thing for me in this one instance.
Perfect. Well, the final question, this is a fun one, and it's kind of an open-ended question, and I'll start with Aaron on this one. And I want you to finish this sentence. Wouldn't it be great if?
Just speaking with Mr. Cross, previous meeting, we talked a little bit about, kind of, if you had your, wishes, what would you kind of try to see happen? And every so often you get a DoD policy that's issued from on high, has effects within your organization, can shift workflow, knowledge management, records keeping, records management. So wouldn't it be great if DoD policymakers knew what software could be on the front end instituted so that the policy would be compliant, and the level of compliance throughout a given organization can be tracked over time. Mm-hmm. Right now, if it's issued, you tell people your daily workflow is meant to do X, Y, Z, as opposed to what it was previous to that policy. So the kind of automation of policy implementation and compliance tracking would be huge pre-issuance of policy.
Okay. Almost like a vetting and saying, does this make sense, or could this be applicable, or is it just a good policy that really isn't applicable, not applicable, but enforceable, and you sit there and say, I don't know how I'm going to do that.
Sure.
Got it. Wouldn't it be great if?
So similar to what Aaron said, but taking it a little bit further, right? Wouldn't it be great if I had access to all of the data I needed to automate all of these processes, right? So from our perspective, that's a huge problem, and it's a huge need, right? I mean, I don't want to have people doing manual things when I can automate these processes, and even data loads very simply. So yeah, so that's kind of the biggest thing, and even knowing. Going back to my old school, SOA days where you talk about service-oriented architecture, even knowing all of the things out there, it'd be great if I knew all of the things that the DoD was working on, or even the DON for that matter, because the list seems to grow every day. You've got different people doing, identity management solutions over here, and then this guy is starting to do something, that's not identity management, but then it kind of, turns into that sort of thing. So just having that ability to know everything was out there would be huge.
Good luck with that.
Right. Like you said, wouldn't it be great if?
No. I understand. I'm with you. And that's the challenge with any the organizations that these two gentlemen represent. Really, it's amazing the work that they do, and they're very modest about their organizations and saying, okay, what are either the challenges they're facing or the visions they have to move it forward. And it's amazing to see once an organization gets behind it and said, okay, take that little victory. Say, okay, what's this little victory? Okay, and then build on it and build on it and build on it. And I loved some of your points in saying, okay, how are we managing our workforce? How are we from onboarding, or how are they getting up to speed on either their technology, their job, their process? And it's a challenge I think many organizations have, so you're not alone. But I think your organizations are doing it better than most. So I just want everybody to put their hands together and thank our presenters, and thanks for your time.